So as a more totalitarian, Orwellian dystopian future begins to creep in on us on the internet, the question I leave you with is, how are you going to inform people what they're missing? You're not going to be able to email them. Google won't let you. They won't let you have a Gmail account. They'll take it away. Or they'll find some way of auto-spamming and blocking out what you have to send. They're not going to let you put a YouTube video up, and if you do put one up, it'll be in a limited state. It'll be in purgatory. Nobody will watch it. You won't be able to share it on Facebook because Zuckerberg won't allow it. It's hate speech, and Merkel told him so. Jack Dorsey shadow banned you, so your tweets aren't going to go anywhere. So what mechanism, what way of fighting back does the internet have in this dystopic future? How do we get the message out? What website is going to allow us to accomplish that? It's all well and good to share it amongst ourselves, to be the canary in the coal mine, but it does us no good if we can't convince the other people who aren't canaries that shit's about to happen, because they're all going to get buried under rubble. Be assured that these policy changes and approaches which are going to be implemented on the internet are going to make it next to impossible for us to communicate our viewpoints going forward. I believe that it's politically motivated. I believe that there is a heavily leftist-leaning bias at these companies, and I think they know what they're doing, and I think they don't care that they're doing it. They don't uphold free speech. They don't care about free speech. They want their speech. You can make the argument all day that they are a private corporation, and they have the right to run their website any way they want to. That's not the argument I'm making with you here. What I'm saying is, this is what is going to happen. And for those people that aren't willing to be complacent and lay down and see the danger that's coming around the bend, how are we going to deal with it? Because I think it is time to really talk about what the fucking plan is. Because at this point, we definitely need one.
As many of you might recognize, that was Mr. Metokur, formerly known as the Internet Aristocrat. He ran a channel back in the day, formed a new one, and has since soared in numbers. And he put out this video very recently, the other day, covering this very important topic, and I'm going to expand upon it. I would strongly recommend at the outset that you check out his entire video before viewing this. But I wanted to summarize his point in his ending point, essentially. That is his most cogent and topical argument he was making. And I want to expand upon it here. Whatever enterprise we might individually or as groups be engaging in on YouTube, whether we belong to quote-unquote MGTOW or quote-unquote alt-right, or, as I like to think of myself, you're just an independent channel, because that's how I view myself. I'm in some technical sense MGTOW, but I am an independent channel with views that diverge from mainstream views. And as much as I don't like them, and in some cases even loathe them, I don't know if any of you caught wind of the Kraut and Tea debacle, but I now know of it in its full detail, and I've since removed him from Skype and unsubscribed from him because he just behaved in a completely immature and asinine manner by all accounts. But even the skeptic community, right? All of these factions and the individuals who do their own thing, such as myself, we are all part of something that one might be inclined to call counterculture. Now, counterculture is a kind of abused term. You hear it all the time. However, it's something legitimate in the sense that whatever your worldview might be, if you run a channel and you present views to your subscribers and the world at large that contravene the commandments, the 10 commandments of our society, of the mainstream, that don't toe the line, in particular that don't toe the line that Google, YouTube, and other social media platforms are attempting to establish and solidify and make permanent, you are de facto part of a counterculture. I say all kinds of things on my channel that invoke the ire of all manner of people. I invoke the ire of the alt-right. I invoke the ire of MGTOW. I invoke the ire of normies. I piss everybody off. I don't do that intentionally. I'm just a curious person. I like exploring different topics. The consequences and the fallout of that curiosity can be felt and seen in the comment section, as well as loss of subscriptions. I gladly accept those sacrifices as they are necessary for me to maintain my nature as a being. But even if you're part of a group, even if you subscribe to the alt-right and every bit of dogma and doctrine that might be ascribed to the alt-right, or you're some hardcore MGTOW that thinks only a certain type of video fits MGTOW criteria, and all your videos are about how women suck and blah-de-blah. Or if you're one of these rather loathsome skeptics who make fun of SJWs or say things that are completely benign by the lights of what I talk about, but still somehow are subjected to these things. Or Mr. Metokur, who I like to think of Mr. Metokur as a kind of independent guy himself. He does his own thing. He is not PC, rather obviously, but he does his own thing. And what he's talking about is very serious. So we who are part, and I want to establish that point, what is a counterculture? That is a counterculture. People are doing things that diverge from the mainstream, that are not appreciated by the mainstream and by those in positions of authority, power, and influence. Well, we have a major issue. The issue is our house of cards. Yes, this is our house. Those of us who are YouTubers. Most of us are YouTubers. Some of us use other platforms to a more limited extent, but most of us are YouTubers. And our domicile is a house of cards. The structure is weak. The pillars are bound to collapse at some point in time, and because we cannot fortify our own house, our own homes. Why can we not fortify our own homes? Because we didn't build them. We didn't create them. We have, including myself, we've relied on architects and engineers from the outside, who they themselves operate on the directorate, as it were, conducting things in a manner that, doesn't approve of us. They have the power, they can and will almost certainly direct things towards us and try to silence counter opinions of the counterculture, the larger counterculture. Whichever niche you belong to, or if you don't belong to a niche, it doesn't matter. These people don't like what much of us have to say. And we don't have a lot of options. You see, many of you might know Cody Wilson, who rather famously or infamously, depending on your perspective, engaged in his 3D gun printing campaign. Since then, he's created Patreon, meant as a counterpart to Patreon. And these are instances of a kind of countercultural effort on the part of an individual. But we need to be honest. People talk about Minds.com, Vimeo, and all these alternative sites. But they are paltry and small and of limited scope and influence when you compare it to YouTube. YouTube is vast, gigantic. We need to accept that. But we also need to accept that it's being guided by forces that do not like members of a counterculture. The irony, of course, is that many of these members of the counterculture don't like each other. The infighting, the toxicity that exists within these groups. But that's the whole point. They're opposed to all of us who belong to this greater counterculture. And we do not have any recourse, any place of respite that we can return to. Because the structure of the house, these are designs of the rulers, essentially, the lords and ladies of Google, those who run YouTube. It is a very precarious situation we currently find ourselves in, and I say that with no sense of humor, and I'll tell you why. YouTube and the internet in the past decade or so really have taken on a life of their own. And this is largely a good thing. In some sense, you could lament this, that real life has, for many of us, taken a back seat. However, we need to be honest about certain things. And one thing is that The reason why so many of us have countercultural opinions and views and even knowledge in this current year harks back to the fact that at some point in time, someone came onto YouTube. In my case, I say this openly, Barbarossa was my original inspiration. He was the one that motivated me. He got me in the door, as it were, by recommending my videos. And to this day, I'm grateful towards him. But he himself, obviously, was a very strongly countercultural figure. I should say the late Barbarossa, because he no longer produces videos. But still, his impact was tremendous on many of us. I'll always be in debt to him for that. Had YouTube, back in the early days, when Barbarossa first got started, and I'm trying to remember, was it 2008? I got started maybe around 2010-ish. It was about 2 years after Barbarossa had really taken off. And had YouTube been that kind of platform, it's very possible there would be no Stardust. Now, you could say that's inconsequential. I'm just a very average person of average capacities. But nonetheless, if you've enjoyed my content, if you found it helpful, interesting, whatever, I might not have come to be in the sense that I am now, of course. If it had been, say, in 2008 and 9, that kind of YouTube. YouTube has transformed and evolved in those times, or devolved, one might say. And the problem here is that the internet, and particularly YouTube, has been such a strong force and progenitor of alternate ideas and countercultural ideas, whatever the nature of those specific ideas might be. Like I said, the faction doesn't really matter here. This is across factions. That a shutting down of YouTube, of the countercultural nature of YouTube, of the countercultural voices, could be devastating. Because you're not going to head out to the corner store, obviously, and get the latest countercultural news. You're not going to do that because it's just not there. No, we get our countercultural news from the internet. I learned about the red pill with respects to women from the internet. When I sought to educate myself in greater detail and depth on human evolution, I started with the internet, and I read books, but I started with the internet, getting basics down, building upon the basic structure that I already had in place, expanding upon it. When I wanted to learn more about human biodiversity a few years back, I went to the internet, and then I read a book or two. You know, there's a real danger here. The danger is loss of knowledge. Now, there was a time in the Dark Ages. 476, of course, is that magic year of the fall of Rome. Of course, Rome had fallen far earlier than 410. The Visigothic sack brought about by Alaric. Rome was kind of a goner by then. But afterwards, you had, they call it the Dark Ages. I remember when I was a child, and a teenager even, almost romantically envisioning the European Dark Ages as this time where the heavens were a perpetually swarthy state. The sun was nowhere to be seen, or if it were to be seen, it would maybe peek a few rays through the clouds, through the soot, silt, and darkness. Of course, these were fanciful notions, but the Dark Ages, there's a reason why that term existed. Much of the knowledge of classical antiquity had been lost. Some of it had been passed on. Some of it had been accepted by the Germanic tribes in particular, but a lot of it was lost. And rather famously, the Irish monks, some of them, were known for having tried to preserve this knowledge, learning ancient Greek, Latin, and copying it and appending for various things. And what many people don't know is that many monasteries in southern Germany and Bavaria also attempted to preserve this knowledge. It was not the unique project or enterprise of the Irish monks, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that There were select enclaves of knowledge, of science, and science actually does mean knowledge, coming from the Latin word scientia, that sought to preserve what had been. Now, I dare say that we lack this in the current year. We don't have it. People like Jordan Peterson are immune because he's got such a fan base and he's such a powerful force. And by now, the glorious Sargon of Akkad no longer even belongs to the skeptic community. He's just a money man who kind of does his own thing. All within the framework, of course, of being a skeptic, but, a big shot, as it were. And so in some sense, he kind of exists outside of that too, because he's a known name. But the rest of us, the small fries, the small potatoes, we're in great danger. Whatever value you might see in my work, whether there's no value to be seen in it, or great, or somewhere in between, without Barbarossa, I would not be. And without the platform that had rendered permissible his type of content in those early days, he would be around. And in subsequent years, the various bonds and connections we've made with people. The fact that to this day, C.S. MGTOW remains a close friend of mine, despite his absence on YouTube, which I regard as tragic and a consequence of, the kind of horrible infighting we see characterize groups that I had highlighted and talked about in The Illusion of Individuation. But there's that, Coltane, the late Adam Jensen, that is, he is dead, the actual late, and more recent friendships, such as those with Reactionary Expat, that have all borne fruit, both on a personal level and on an intellectual level. I mean, we're risking something, I think, something great here. And I can't think of a good solution. I don't think Minds.com is a great solution. The biggest issue, of course, is that Google itself, the ruler of YouTube, the ultimate ruler of YouTube, the potentate or the despot, however you wish to term it, well, they're the biggest platform. If you look at the Mr. Metokur video, you'll see that even the Google search engine fudges things and changes things. And please do check that video out. We don't have an alternative. We need a Cody Wilson, or perhaps a legion of Cody Wilsons, to come up with an alternative website, to come up with an alternative to YouTube, a YouTube that is a safe haven for ideas, however vile they might be in the perception of some, however vitriolic they're thought to be in the eyes of the many. We have no saving feature here. We have no house built upon a very sturdy structure. We have the opposite. And I worry. Yes, I could migrate to Minds.com. That wouldn't solve very much. The platform is just much, much smaller. And I'm not just worried about myself. If I go under here, somehow I would survive in some form, shape, or manner. But the ideas are out there. And YouTube is one of the great ways, perhaps the best way, to propagate certain ideas. They wouldn't just come for the small potatoes such as myself. Maybe some of the bigger channels as well. And even these skeptics who are not really skeptics at all, they would be targeted as well. This is very serious. Now, what can I do about it? Not much, other than to raise awareness. We need people, the gods bless their souls, who are capable of creating websites, of running things, to come up with alternatives. People who favor no specific point of view necessarily, although of course they would do just as human beings, but favor the free exchange of ideas, favor the existence of a counterculture, which is really necessary. Things are going south rather quickly in mainstream society, and they're going south on YouTube and on the internet. We need something. We need a platform that is not as helpless and as fragile as the current one. counterculture in our house of cards. Well, there you have it. We need to do something, gentlemen. Or should I say ladies and gentlemen. Everyone, more videos will be forthcoming. This is a rather solemn video, but it's something to think about. If you know people who have the skills or what have you, encourage them. This can end, but it shouldn't end, is my view. And I'll be around as long as I can be before either death consumes me or the forces at large that dislike me and my content. Everyone take care, and I will check you out later, and enjoy your weekend. May the gods watch over you, especially these days. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.